Welcome to This Birding Life, a podcast for birdwatchers everywhere. I'm your host, Bill Thompson III. Special thanks to our podcast host, Birdwatchers Digest, the magazine for birders who love to read and readers who love to bird. You can learn more about North America's favorite birding magazine and sample our latest issue by visiting our website at birdwatchersdigest.com. This Birding Life would not be possible without the wonderful financial support of our two corporate sponsors, Carl Zeiss Sports Optics and Rock Jumper Birding Tours. Carl Zeiss Sports Optics are the makers of the amazing Victory SF binocular, the very first binocular made specifically for birders. You can join the Zeiss community of birders on Facebook at facebook.com/ZeissBirding. Zeiss has sponsored This Birding Life for many years now, and we appreciate their support of us and of the birding and bird conservation communities at large. Zeiss, we make it visible. Rock Jumper Birding Tours offers more than 300 tours annually to more than 100 destinations worldwide, using talented guides from among their large staff, plus local birding guides whenever possible. Their commitment to offering a high-quality birding experience is why Rock Jumper enjoys such loyalty among its customers. Plan your next great birding adventure at rockjumperbirding.com. Now on to our episode. This is episode 59, Birding Portugal. On the morning of April 1, 2016, I found myself on a Turkish Airlines flight from Tel Aviv to Istanbul, just after the Champions of the Flyway bird race in southern Israel. Our team, the Way Off Coursers, had won 2 of the 3 prizes for the bird race, having done the most promotion for the event and having raised the most money as a team. I was in a great mood as I moved through the Ataturk airport in Istanbul and made my way to the second leg of my trip, a flight to Lisbon for a week of birding in southern Portugal. I'd been invited by my acquaintance Joao Jara, the leading birding guide in Portugal, and we'd tried for a couple of years to schedule a trip. Now it was finally happening. I was kind of worn out from the Champions race, and I'll talk more about that fabulous event in the next episode of This Birding Life. But nonetheless, I was looking forward to a relaxing week of birding in warm, sunny Portugal. Little did I know, my spring 2016 streak of bringing crappy weather with me wherever I went was to continue for at least another month. And I was about to get the mother of all head colds from a sneezing seatmate on the flight. Joao met me at the airport at midday, and we drove in the rain across the Tagus estuary to a small town opposite Lisbon known as Alcochete. I settled into my charming room in a small hostel, and then we headed out for a bit of afternoon birding on the estuary. What followed was a week of wonderful looks at amazing birds, delivered by the expert guiding skills of Joao. Over the next several days, while the wind and rain kept us inside the car, I took the opportunity to interview Joao on Portugal's birds, history, food, politics, and more. The week passed in a happy blur, despite my horrible cold, which you can hear in my voice, and the windy, rainy, unseasonably cold April weather. Joao kept apologizing for the weather, but there was no need. The birding, the food, the wine, the people we met, the landscape, and the cultural history kept me enthralled with Portugal. Here's an audio representation with a few images, if you're viewing the enhanced version, of my week of birding in southern Portugal, starting with some short, en route interviews with Joao Jara of Birding Portugal. So these are people that you already knew, or habitats that you wanted to get into?
Because this is my local patch. As you notice, this is 20 minutes from Lisbon, so many times in my old days, even in the pharmaceutical industry, I would arrive in summer at 6 p.m. home, and I would come to bird until 9 in a very relaxed way.
That's beautiful.
There are also some San Martins already. You call them a different name.
San Martin, bank swallow, ruffling swallow?
Yeah. Bank swallow.
And how big is this farm, do you know?
I don't know exactly, but it's not that big. It's maybe, let me think, in kilometers, maybe 3 by 1. So okay. It's small. Less than 1, in fact.
But what great habitat.
Yeah, it is. And again, the richness came from the diversity of habitats, the cork oak trees, and also these open areas with sand,
Yeah.
which, for instance, crested lark loves, and also the salt pans, of course.
So when did you start your birding company, Joao?
Back in 2008.
Okay.
Well, birding was always my hobby since a long time, and you see some magpies crossing the road here. This is a good opportunity for you to see them. So just to say that they move typically in familiar groups. Look at that. You see with the black cap.
Yep.
So they were finally splitted from the species that exist in China, and you can see some here on. You are seeing them.
A whole mess of them down the road there. Yeah.
Great. Wow. You know that there were some theories about this species because of the fact that you have an extremely similar species in China and Taiwan.
Right.
You heard about probably.
Yeah.
So there were theories, more scientific, including the glaciation, splitting two populations, which is true in many species, and other more spectacular theories like the Portuguese navigators bringing
pets back, yeah.
It seems that the last studies, genetic studies about the birds, prove that they were splitted millions of years ago, so definitely nothing to do with glaciations or with
Portuguese
navigators. So it seems that it's just a fantastic example of convergent evolution.
Now, did you grow up with an appreciation for birds?
Oh, always. Of animals, I would say. I was, that kind of kid with glasses, always, seeing photos and imagining myself in the field. And when I finally start to be able to go to the field, and my parents also motivate me a lot. I start to be crazy with fish.
Okay.
Namely aquariums, another J. Then I start to be obsessed with amphibians and reptiles. That's a wren, common wren.
Sure.
And finally I evolved.
There's a blackbird just flew across.
Okay.
I think up out of here into that bush there.
And finally I start to enjoy birds. And this is a black cap. Let me try to show you this lagoon from a different angle. This is a great place also for short-toed tree creepers. So keep an eye on.
That afternoon we entered the first cork oak habitat I'd ever been in. Cork oaks are the national tree of Portugal. They're almost the holy tree of Portugal. Their bark, which is where wine corks and other natural cork products come from, grows thick around the trunk and acts as a fire retardant protection for the tree. In areas of Iberia, Spain, and Portugal, where cork oaks grow, there are often wildfires. The cork from cork oaks is shaved off with special knives in a harvest cycle that happens about every 15 years. Trees are marked with numbers to record the last harvest. The interesting thing about the cork oak habitat is that it is rich in flora and fauna. Woodpeckers, magpies, owls, hawks, hoopoes, larks, shrikes, warblers, tits, and many more European bird families thrive in areas where cork oaks occur. The ground under the oaks is often open, grassy, or sandy, making for a bucolic scene that is very easy to be in as a birdwatcher. While we drove along through the cork oaks, along a sandy two-track path, I asked Joao about the habitat. And how far does the cork habitat go? First of all, are these native trees that occur here naturally?
That's a very good question, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure if they are. There are several theories. I think so, they are, but I'm not 100% sure.
They're not necessarily planted in rows. It doesn't just sort of randomly.
These ones. Yeah. Well, over the years, of course, these are managed.
Right.
And are managed this way normally. You don't put in rows, for instance.
Right.
Just See, there is a small colony of bee eaters here, and they normally arrive on the first week of April. I just heard them, so I'm just checking if they are here already. That's blue teeth. There's a black cap somewhere there. This is basically an insulation product, because it seems that in Iberia it was very common to have big fires. So this tree evolve in a way, this species of tree evolve in a way that create this dead layer.
Right.
This is that layer of cells, which is the cork, because you have a substance that produces this. And if you try to burn this is extremely difficult to burn.
I see.
So that's why that's what I mean with insulation. Yeah. So this was extracted in 2008. We are in 16. Yeah, it's almost, no, can't be. No, yeah, it is. Yeah, you see, it's already quite big. It's just the color.
Yeah.
That is
So then what do they cut down in and then?
most probably, yes. They will cut here. It's with a specific knife they use. This guy was not very good. You can see lots of scars, because this is our national tree, and I wouldn't say that it's sacred, but it's a little bit like,
Right.
You go to jail if you destroy a cork tree without authorization. In fact, there are no authorization theoretically, unless there is a construction, something like that. There is no authorization to destroy a cork tree.
So I see some of these other ones are trimmed up a lot higher. Is that because they're older trees that have more growth?
I think it could be also with the shape of the tree. You see?
They don't go up
Probably.
past where they fork, do they?
Well, in that case, yes. It depends,
there they did
really.
there, yeah.
It depends if they consider that is worthwhile. Let's do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe it's.
The following day, we visited another part of the Tagus estuary. We birded massive tidal mud flats along small rivers, tide pools, and salt pans. Salt pans are where traditional salt harvesting takes place. Birds were everywhere: flamingos, spoonbills, ruffs, avocets, and stilts, plus a variety of ducks and hawks and songbirds here and there. All the trees and power poles, as far as you could see, had nesting white storks in various stages of reproduction. Portugal's deep relationship with the sea was demonstrated not just by the salt pans, but also by a massive codfish drying facility now abandoned, which Joao took me to. The grounds of the factory were weedy and grown up, but in all directions one could see thousands of concrete drying racks where the fish was sun-dried before packing up for sale. This weedy open habitat right along the estuary was teeming with birds.
60s to dry the codfish, because in Portugal everybody likes very much codfish, and the codfish we eat is always dry and salted. So in the old days, the way to dry it was just in the sun. So you can imagine an extension of 3 or 4 kilometers of I would say thousands of codfish, and the smell and the birds around probably. But anyway, we just have these remains, which is I think an interesting aspect, almost archaeological aspect.
Right. And the Portuguese cod fishermen would go practically to the other side of the Atlantic after the cod, right?
Yeah, right, to the Greenland, mainly, as far as I know, to Greenland area, but not anymore, unfortunately. Now we buy to Norwegian and Icelandic fishermen.
The cod's fished out. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I think it's also the stock of that fish is getting, the numbers are smaller now compared with 50 years ago.
And I read in a book called Cod, oddly enough, that the location of the cod fisheries back in the 1600s, 1700s was almost a military secret. Like the cod fleet would go out from here and then do all sorts of evasive things to not be followed, so no one could tell where they were going for the cod. Is it?
Yes, I also heard about that like it was like really a treasure. Anyway, it's it's still very obvious that for us cod is very important. For instance, in every Portuguese table for Christmas Eve you need to have boiled codfish, otherwise it doesn't seem like Christmas Eve.
Otherwise Santa's not coming to your house.
Yeah, almost like that, yes. Right.
And what are the birds we're seeing here and here?
Well, we just saw a hooded shrike, a very nice summer migrant in Portugal. We are listening and seeing a couple of crested larks. What else do we have? Lots of swallows, martins. We just saw a black-shouldered kite. We passed nearby. There are some very nice salt pans with good numbers of shorebirds. And in the other side, we can see Lisbon. So in straight line, we are like 10 kilometers from Lisbon,
Right.
which is great.
And which way is the river flowing? Is it flowing to our right here or to our left as we're facing it?
Is flowing to the left.
That's right. So we are upstream from the bridge.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Yes,
Good.
we are. Yeah.
How many people in Lisbon?
Strictly in the city, about 700,000. So as you can
not
see,
many.
it's not a huge city. But we say what we would call the big Lisbon is about 2 million.
Okay.
Almost 2 million, roughly. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Joao.
You are welcome.
On our second day, we ran into another pair of birders being led by Bernardo, one of the other guides in Joao's tour company. The birders, two women from England, were on a short holiday in Portugal, and I asked one of them, Andrea, why they chose Portugal for their destination.
My name's Andrea Kelly. My job is a senior ecologist. I work for the Broads Authority, which is a national park, and that's in Norfolk, very close to Clyde, which everyone knows, of course. But the Norfolk Broads are the biggest protected lowland wetland area in the UK, so that's where I'm from.
And we've just met here in Portugal.
Yeah.
You're down here on a little bit of a birding holiday.
Yeah, a birds and nature holiday, having a bit of a guiding experience today, and then we're off really absorbing all of what we've learned today and taking that on and trying to see great bustard and some of the eagles and then down to the coastal wetlands. But here, this is fantastic today because we're in the Tagus estuary and we're kind of looking right over these salt pans, and we're in this mosaic of habitat. So we've got the open water, the cork oak, and that's just drawing in so much. So just sort of standing here, we're being bombarded by different species just flying over us, and there seems to be this sense of richness here which is all but absent from many areas now in England. Certainly we've got flowering plants, we've got masses of insects, so much life going on. Yeah, it's just like bioabundance, really.
And you're getting a little bit of a jump on spring here. Things are a bit more advanced here in southern Portugal.
Yeah, so within 3 minutes of touchdown yesterday on the plane, we'd seen swallows and swifts and
stuff that's not back in the UK.
Exactly.
Yet.
So it's really an acceleration into spring for us today.
What do you think is the thing that draws people? Like what draws you to take a trip like this and focus it on nature as opposed to focusing it on history or art or shopping or being on the beach?
I'm just kind of not interested in those things, to be quite honest. It's not soul food for me. For me now, and it's honing my life around nature is everything. It's what I do for work and it's what I do for pleasure, and knowing that nature is still out there, because a lot of my job it feels quite depressing a lot of the time at the sharp end, knowing all the pressures that is on our world today.
Right.
But indulging in nature and seeing this abundance and being with people who do this as a job and guide people in these wonderful areas, so that for me tops my levels right up.
So you think you'll go back home renewed, ready to
fight another day, even though I'm in a most wonderful area in the UK, the Broads. Because of my job, battling away and trying to put nature right at the top of the agenda, working with business leaders, trying to struggle to find funding, that grinds it out of me. So coming on holiday just to replenish and also to connect with other areas in the world. So our species, our birds that come are not unique to us in the Broads. So they come from places, staging posts such as the Tagus estuary, and up they come into the UK.
Cool. And here's, it must be interesting to compare this estuary with the one where you live and where you work.
Yeah, so it's a really winter important estuary, the Tagus, as well as the Braden estuary and the Broads, critical wintering staging posts. That's where they get the mass of thousands and thousands of birds.
Mm-hmm. Now, was there a bird that got you started in bird watching?
I don't know.
Spark bird, we call it?
A spark bird might be the golden oriole for me.
Nice.
Yeah, so I wasn't alive to birds until I heard this most amazing call, and I saw it in the distance and I looked it up and then found out it was rare, and then I felt like I'd had a special moment.
Yeah.
It felt special to me, and that got me going, yeah.
And was that in England, in the UK?
That was in England with my sister out on a walk, yeah.
Because they are pretty rare in England, increasingly so.
Yeah, and it wasn't that I was shown it, I found it, with just me and my sister, so that felt even more special.
Oh yeah, golly nuts. I'm hoping the golden orioles will show up here while we're here.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of nice.
Would be, wouldn't it?
Well, thank you so much for talking with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good luck.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Beautiful.
Having birded the Tagus estuary just outside of Lisbon, we next headed a bit farther south to the rolling plains of Alentejo. This massive steppe habitat is home to some of Portugal's most sought-after birds, the great bustard, little bustard, black-bellied sandgrouse, plus a spectacular guild of raptors and vultures. Not long after leaving the Tagus, we found ourselves in the open rolling plains of the Alentejo. Scanning the wildflower-adorned fields for great bustards, we found more than 20 of them, mostly males, displaying in a low swale out of the wind. This fantastic bird stands more than 3 feet tall, and when the male is displaying for watching females, he lowers his head, flattens his tail along his back, exposing and flaring his undertail feathers, which are sparkling white. He then walks around slowly in this jouncy, foamy-looking display, and while he's hoping to impress the nearby ladies. While we were driving down into the Alentejo, Joao told me a little bit about great bustards.
I have a 360 degrees view because of men, I think. Although they are fully protected, nobody can shoot a great bustard. It's a big fine, and basically the person goes to prison. Anyway, they basically have no enemies except chicks, foxes and things like that. But
So there isn't a big cat
except
or anything?
no, just genid, so they are unable to predate such a big bird. You know, the males can reach 16 kilos.
Right.
It's the heaviest flying bird in the world. I hope you are going to see both burst, both flying, maybe dozens, hundreds of birds still today.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I've only ever seen one or two at a time.
Yes, I remember you told me. Now we have a very nice concentration with about 1,400, but again they are concentrated in a relatively small area.
And is it a reserve where they're concentrated?
Well, it's protected, it's not specific. Some parts are reserved, like the Guadiana Valley has some small steppe areas where you can see great bustards, but this Castro Verde Plains, it's not a protected, it's a protected area, but it's not a nature park.
I see.
But again, the birds are protected, nobody can shoot them. Of course, just 60, 70 years ago, there were some recipes of great bustard soup and things like that. Not anymore, of course.
I wonder what it tastes like.
Turkey, maybe?
Yeah.
I remember when I was, I think I did some calculations and I arrived to the conclusion that I had 4 or 5 years old. It was my first, big impact with the birds. I was with my mother in a luxury, how do you say, grocery shop, I don't know. And I saw that gigantic bird dangling, dead of course, with mustache, which is even more criminal. because that means that it was a male in breeding plumage and shot in the breeding season. But I born in '62, so this means that this was around '66. And I remember to ask to my mother, "What is this? Is spectacular! It's so big." And she told me it's a great bastard, of course, in Portuguese. They were quite, I think, relatively common in the beginning of the 20th century. Then, of course, they declined sharply, and after the 80s, they start to increase again, thanks to those protection measures.
Right.
And there is an association that has land here that did a great job protecting the birds, and namely the great bastards.
An agricultural region, the Castro Verde Plain in Alentejo has been farmed for many centuries. Today's chemical-soaked farming techniques can have an adverse effect on birds and wildlife, and for this reason, and to enhance and grow the ecotourism to the region, Joao and several others are working together to create habitat for birds and to help the local people understand the value of healthy bird populations and the healthy amount of tourism that birding can bring.
You are going to see, if you persuade the landowner to put crops that are good for the great bastards, to attract the great bastards, and for every photographer that is go there,
Right.
you pay him like 40 or 50 euros. That's conservation, because he will plant crops that attract the birds, because it's a good business.
Over the next couple of days, I saw evidence of these partnerships in the form of a farmer who is carefully planting crops and maintaining habitat for the birds, as well as welcoming birders and photographers to visit and even stay on his farm. And there was a local cafe where Joao and the other guides bring their birding groups. First, let's visit the cafe, and then we'll visit George, the farmer.
Where are we right now? What's the name of this place?
We are in a place that is called Alcaria, Alcaria Ruiva. It's a tiny town in the middle of the Castro Verde Plain. In fact, more or less in the middle of the Castro Verde Plains and the Guadiana Valley. In fact, it's technically already in the Guadiana Valley. And just to say that this is a restaurant that knows very well the importance of bird watching, because we bring here a fairly good number of clients, and we believe that this kind of people is very important because they act as kind of ambassadors of this hobby, saying to the other people that it's important to keep the bustards and the eagles, so they can be very, very important for us.
What's this woman's name?
Cecilia Amalia. In fact, is the name of the restaurant.
Cecilia's.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's really important because these people needs to feel also the value, basically bringing money for these very remote places through the bird watching activity.
How many people have you brought here over the years, would you say?
Over the years, well, maybe more than 1,000 people, 2,000 maybe.
From how many countries?
I don't know. Well, from many countries, but mostly UK, United States, Canada, Sweden, Denmark.
People who would have never found this place on their own, probably.
I think so, honestly, yeah. And this place is many times a highlight, of course, because of the quality of the food, and because it's really genuinely typical, and the lady is very nice. She's teaching, she's learning English, and she's a nice person, and she sings.
Okay, Joao, where are we pulling into now?
So we are just arriving to a private property, the Aparissa property, and our company, Birds and Nature Tours Portugal, established a partnership with this landowner in order to install some heights. and the main objective is to attract charismatic birds like little bustard, great bustard, black-bellied sandgrouse, vultures, in order to bring bird photographers to take pictures on these hides or blinds, you say in America. And we believe this is a very good way of also doing conservation, because, for instance, in order to attract the bustards, this landowner is planting some plants that attract the birds, and of course he wouldn't do it without this project.
So he's making money in addition to, by altering his farming practices to allow for the birds.
Exactly. That's the objective, is that is a win-win situation for our company, for him, and more important, for the birds, because the birds have good crops to feed, and of course this is the kind of activity that we can implement and charge a reasonable amount of money, because bird photography is very well regarded, with a positive impact on the birds, on conservation.
And one of the birds we were going to see here in the farmyard, which we've just pulled into, is a European roller.
Yeah, in fact, I forgot when I mentioned the key species for the hides. One that is more easy, I would say, to take pictures, which is exactly the European roller. But this is a great property. It's wonderful to take pictures, for instance, for other nice birds like European bee-eater, and of course the bustards are always the most desired species, especially great bustard in breeding plumage and displaying, which is basically in March and beginning of April.
Well, the bustards are very shy, though, I've noticed, and we've seen them out in these vast rolling fields. How do you know where to put the hides to be near the bustards without disturbing them?
Well, they are quite loyal to places for the display. So if you know where they typically display, it's relatively easy to put a hide without disturbing, because what we try to do is really to guarantee that there are no disturbance, meaning the bird photographer, this is quite tough. A roller in front of us. Yeah. Just land.
There's a red-legged partridge right there on the left side.
Yeah. Oh, even better, yeah. That's a beautiful bird. Seems a male, very neat plumage. So what we ask to the bird photographers to do is basically to get inside the hide or the blind before dawn and leave only at night. It's quite tough. It can mean 14, 15 hours. In this moment, a couple of Germans that are
okay.
From Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Eram para ir embora hoje, ficam até sábado. Desmarcaram em Porto Alegre o que tinham e vão ficar mais estes dias.
That's a good sign.
Here I have some wood. Sometimes the little owl is here. That's something they like a lot. Nestes paus, o mochozinho galego aparece aqui, só se vê a cabeça às vezes.
We already saw the little owl that you have in that box,
yes,
on the way.
On the
That's
road,
always
yeah.
nice guy.
Always looking out.
Checking who is coming. He's a good dog. How do you say it? Bill? Guard dog?
Yeah, guard dog. Oh, yeah.
Yes, they are always, but they are very shy right now. In the moment, they are very, very. They used to let us come close, but now they are.
They are breeding now.
Yes. So here, there is one hide.
Yeah, this one is the only one I show briefly
Okay.
to Bill.
Oh, this one.
This is close because under the lamp,
Yep.
to the right side, we have the hole they used to breed the roller.
Oh, okay.
So we are about 7 meters away from him, and we used this tree and the fence to stop. Here there is aqui está peneireiro comum.
Common kestrel nested also.
We have 3 little boxes on these trees.
You can see them.
Oh, yeah.
Nest boxes. The one from the left used to breed the roller. The one in the middle used to read the common castle, and in the right side, last year nobody used it, but used to be there a little hour also.
Okay. Oh,
And you
nice
see-
neighborhood.
You
Yes,
see
yeah.
white stork, grey heron, and one of these days you will have spoonbill, I believe. Here.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Because we always see a few,
On the right one,
and lots of
there's a common castle
Music is
this way.
spotless starlings and Spanish sparrows nesting in the box, in the nests.
So this year I
One
made.
castle is flying away. Then.
Yes, he was here on. Oh, there's one castle here on the
Oh,
wood,
yeah.
to the left side of the wood.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see.
That's the one who uses the nest.
Yeah, it's a common. Castle. You can see the big mustache.
Yeah.
Devia até perguntar.
Oh, there's a bustard.
Yeah. Just oh,
Yes, yes.
And who's diving on him?
it's a raven.
Raven?
The raven. Ok, vá. Abraço então, tá? Até logo, obrigado.
Wow.
And on this tree we also have a black kite on the nest.
Oh, okay.
On this eucalyptus tree, sometimes from this side the tree grow a little bit, and it's not easy to.
Oh, no, I see him.
To
I
see
see the
the-
nest, yeah.
Today with the wind, yes, maybe.
This is the biggest dam in the whole area, and over the years I saw here spectacular birds on
Oh.
migration, for instance, shorebirds, whisker tern, black tern, gullbill tern is regular. In fact, it's perfectly possible
We
to
have
spot
some-
one or two.
Gorgeous.
Some spoonbills.
Yeah, I
on
see the
island.
spindles, yeah.
Yeah, always. One of these days they will start to breed on that colony. I'm pretty sure. Yes, Eurasian spoonbills.
Wow, look at all the swallows out there.
Lots of ducks, huh? Black-winged
Yeah.
stilts.
This is your lake?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
While in the Alentejo, we stayed in the town of Mertila, nestled on the Guadiana River. This historic town has been inhabited, built up, torn down, fought over by virtually every major ethnic and religious group in southern Europe. The Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Romans, Visigoths, Arabs, and Christians. Each conquering people would incorporate, alter, or expand, or build on top of the previous inhabitants' infrastructure, and their civilization would in turn be overtaken by the next. The result is a town with an incredibly rich and varied history, a dream destination for any historian, anthropologist, or archaeologist. I took a historical tour by a local guide named Fernando, and we went to the Citadel that looms over Mertila. Being a history buff, I found this to be fascinating. As we walked up the sloping streets to the Citadel, which is a fortified castle that once enclosed the entire city, Fernando and my local hostess Rosinda talked to me about Mertila's past.
So here's my question. How did they decide 1 year, oh, let's just build a new church on top of this one?
Yeah.
How did they decide that?
They decide because this is a holy place
Yeah.
at the first time. So if it is a holy place for the ancient civilization, it should be a holy place for us too.
Okay.
And we, with our prayers, we're going to take the ancient religion away and we impose our own.
It's also a way of dominating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
impose
I see.
yourself.
Yeah.
you know.
On top of, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's why they build on
also,
top.
and also a very wise decision. You don't destroy. You
It's adapted.
Entomb it.
adapt.
Yeah.
you know.
I'm not going to bother you with this. Now you are coming from the profane into the sacred.
Right.
Remember the five naves, the five woods? 1, 2, 5. First century BC.
BC.
Yes.
So who built the original citadel?
Most probably the Phoenicians.
Okay.
The Phoenicians, but as they just have this place here, just like another trading center.
Yeah.
They don't build too much structures
Yeah.
because they don't have industry here.
Right.
But when the Romans settle here, they have these huge constructions.
Right.
They have to build their own
Right.
their own temples, their own houses. And now we are in the Roman era.
Okay.
The Romans first, then the Arabs, then the Christians. Now is it more clear,
Yeah.
more understandable? It's like this.
My name is Rosinda Pimenta. I work with the municipality of Mertola in the tourism offices, and I'm the kind of person that organizes and promotes our tourism offer.
I see. And how long have you been doing this, Rosinda?
I've been in Mertola since 2007 because I'm not originally from here, but I fell in love with the town and I got a job here, and so I'm working since then here.
And have you been working in the same job the whole time?
In here, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
We have in the municipality we have an office that organizes our tourism offers, not only the bird watching project, but also the cultural tourism, also other offers in terms of nature, and I'm working on that since I came. Yeah.
And so what are some of the other major categories of tourism that you have here?
Well, the culture, of course,
Right.
the heritage, because we are in a very old and historic town. So that's the main project, I would say, because it's something that has been working since the archaeological studies began here. They always had this perspective of promoting the work, and so the tourism project of Mertola was born from that. So the culture and the heritage tourism is probably the main product here. And then there's nature, because we are in a natural park, and in that segment, I would say, we have bird watching, we have hiking, we have the river. I mean, there's a variety of things that we can do outdoors. So that's the second big product we have. And of course, the gastronomy and wine.
Of
also.
course.
Yeah.
We can't forget that part. So tell us, we're standing up here outside the basilica, yes?
Yes.
And we've just been walking around the grounds of the old castle. Can you tell people what it's like to in this particular setting? Because this is audio. People won't have. I'll have a few pictures along with it, but tell people how it's positioned and what you can see from here.
Well, we can see the big river, Guadiana River, and it's a mark in the landscape here. And it's also a mark in the history of Mertola. Then we have the white houses, because we are in Alentejo, a region in Portugal that's very hot, and normally the houses are white to keep them fresher. And it's quite typical, the white houses in the south. We have a lot of historical evidences of the past of Mertola, so we have a lot of museums, and we have the streets are very typical, and something that is also that we can't describe in words, but you have to live it. You have the sun and the light of Mertola that is very particular, and of course you have the people, and that's the main essence of this village and of the small villages in Portugal and probably around, is that we have the genuine people who are very simple and are very welcoming.
Yeah.
Also,
I would say that. I
Yeah.
would say that's the case. So we've just been walking up through the castle and the church and the archaeological dig, and it's going back to thousands of years BC.
yeah.
And there are stones here from the Romans. There's the Mirab from the Moors when they were here. There's Christian churches. There are all kinds of It's fascinating stuff. Do you find that a lot of people come here and specifically looking to dig into the history? And
Yes, like I said, it's one of the main reasons for people to come to Martula, because also this is connected with a very interesting and profound study. It's not just a tourism project, it's also an archaeological and scientific project. Right. So a lot of people come because they hear about Martula, and Martula is mentioned around the world, especially also in the academic world, because it's an example of how we can preserve history and put the heritage at the service of the community, because all of this brings income to the community, and the community defends that heritage. And so that's one of the reasons why people come. Also, because we can testify different periods of the history in just one place. So that's very interesting. We can see the different levels in the construction of the town, and they all report to different times in the history, and that's very interesting for people to see. And also the village is a very scenic and visual village, which is has its own charm. And so everything helps: the heritage, the river, and the scenic image of the village. I think that's what attracts people to come.
I noticed that the hotel where we stayed these last couple of nights, Hotel Museo.
Yes.
Museum.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
In the basement of it, on the ground floor, there's a dig for ancient habitation.
Yes.
It seems like everywhere that people would dig around here to put a foundation in for a house or to remodel, you're going to find something. Is that?
Yes, it is. That's a fact. Also, in all the constructions and all the repairs, there's an obligation for an archaeological person to be in place, presence, because it's everywhere in the village. So if you find it in the museum, you find it everywhere in here. That's why the museums are spread all over the old town, because people, when they do the research and they do the excavation, they found the things, and most of them you just can't take them out of there. So that's something that is natural to all of us in here. If you dig, you will find something, definitely.
And it seems like you told me earlier today that when people find something, they just make a little museum right there.
Yes.
Not take it and put it in the Central Museum somewhere in Lisbon or wherever. You leave it in place and create a small, so this town is full of little museums.
Yes, it is. Now we have 13.
Wow.
And we could have more if we had more resources, because there, like I said, it's everywhere. One of the things we do is sometimes some of the pieces that we find go to be exhibited in all over the world. We just had last year some of our pieces in the Louvre in Paris, because they were very important. And since we have a great collection, a big collection of ceramic from the Islamic period, some of these pieces are normally out in exhibitions all over the world. And that's what we do. We just take some of those pieces and then invite people to come and see the rest here.
Well, I can tell you from my experience over the past few days and birding here in southern Portugal, it's a fascinating area. The bird life is amazing, and the numbers of great bustards and little bustards and rollers and bee eaters and everything else that we've seen, sand grouse. It's amazing, but it adds to it quite a bit to have the gastronomy, the food, the wine, and also the very friendly people. And then icing on the cake, I would say, is to be able to take this little tour like we did just now, and just it makes you feel quite humble to feel that your place in time is just a blink compared to all these thousands of years that happened before we were walking through here today. And think about all those people that I find that to be very fascinating and satisfying too.
It puts everything, I think, in perspective. And also in here we find that different cultures are present, and in our days we can visit them all and know them all and understand them all a little bit. And that's also something to think about. That things can, the world can be a better place if we just coexist.
And try to understand
like we coexist here with all these different cultures, And so I think it's not only our place in time, but in our times it always makes us think also in that perspective that, well, it's a passage, right? It's a little bit like that. We're just passing by here, so we don't have to make a big fuss about it, I guess. Yeah.
So, Rosinda, if people listening wanted to find out more about Mertila, how could they do that?
Well, we have a website. It's visitmertila.pt for Portugal.
Portugal, okay.
Yes, and you can find all the information there. We also have a Facebook. So that's one of the ways you can reach us. We answer all the requests. We are very welcome to answer all the questions, and that's the main gate for our tourism office in here. Yeah.
Well, it's been a wonderful experience. I want to thank you for inviting me
You're
to come
welcome.
for a visit. It's too bad it's such a quick one, but
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be seeing you again, and I want to wish you all the best with attracting more people to come here to your beautiful little village and this incredible part of the world. I'm sure there's a lesser kestrel going over and calling, the official bird of the town, I guess.
Yes.
And I also would tell you, you're going to have a lot of people
I hope
coming
so.
here.
I
It's
hope so.
fantastic. So
We welcome everyone.
all the
yes.
best with that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
After 3 days and 2 nights in Mertila, Joao and I drove to the southern coast of Portugal in the Algarve region. We had just parts of 2 days left in this area of sun, sand, and sea, but we picked up a number of bird species for our trip list, including great skua, purple swamp hen, and little bittern. Our one night in the south, we had dinner in a tiny family restaurant in Tavira that Joao knew, and joining us was our mutual friend and fellow birder Ray Tipper, a British expat now living and guiding in the Algarve. Inside the restaurant was an old man who patiently waited until our server called him over to tell us about the fish he'd caught that day. Here's a bit of the conversation, most of which is in Portuguese. He chose our fish individually from an ice display case, then took them outside to his charcoal fire to grill them for us. The meal, like nearly every one I had in Portugal, was just outstanding.
Everybody that comes here is baila. It reminds sea bass. It's very similar.
Yeah,
to sea
right,
bass.
but yes, but
Maybe a little bit more fatty, more tasty, more.
It was very sweet, though. I thought.
it's lovely, absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And what's it called? What's the fish called in Portuguese?
Baila.
Baila.
Peixe do mar,
Baila.
não é dos aviários, é do...
Claro. It's really from the sea. It's not from. It's not. No, it's saying it's not from aquaculture. It's not.
Yeah.
So which makes a big difference.
Eu aqui na minha casa, prefiro não ter peixe, mas se não for do mar não quero peixe.
Faz bem. Faz bem.
Para enquanto, pode não ter, se não tem, não tem, mas o peixe que tem aqui é todo do mar.
He's saying, deixa-me só traduzir. He's saying that nowadays everybody is having fish from fish farms, but his idea is, I prefer not to have, it needs to be from the sea, basically.
It was fabulous.
Muito obrigado.
Por favor.
Chama-se Joaquim, não é?
Joguinho.
Obrigado.
Almond, yeah, thank you.
What a splendid pie.
Splendid.
She's saying that is delicious. Well, it's
sure.
a pie of the speciality
Of the house.
Oh, beautiful.
The next day, Joao and I birded our way back to Lisbon, and before my flight the next morning, he gave me a brief tour of Lisbon. And here are some snippets of the things he was telling me as we drove through the streets of Lisbon.
Towns are facing a river or the sea, unlike Spain. The main squares of cities and towns in Portugal are always facing the sea or rivers.
Okay.
For instance, if you go to Spain, they have the famous Plaza Mayors,
Yeah.
and they are right in the middle. It's a different approach. Like you see, Madrid is right in the middle of the Iberian Peninsula.
Right.
It's not coincidence. This is also related with our ability, the Portuguese, for trading.
Right. Sailing.
Yeah.
What were the years when Portugal was a dominant world power, would you say?
The 14th century.
So the 1300s.
13th and 14th century. So late 1490. That was the golden period for this country.
And why was Portugal so powerful then?
Well, that's a difficult question, but we basically managed to dominate the trade to east, to India, namely to India, but not only to India, Malaysia, all those regions of the globe. And on those days, that was a key factor. So he basically managed to find a way by boat to reach India, which was a mystery how to reach India. And they realized that the way would be through Africa and then turn to the Indian Ocean.
Right.
This is one of the main squares of Lisbon, but not the main. The main is facing the river, of course.
There's a castle up on the hill there.
That's the Lisbon Castle. I think it was built on the 12th century, 11 something. First by Moorish. It was a fortification and then was conquered by our king. So this was Rossio with the castle you see on top.
Oh yeah.
It's a great place to see side by side Pallid and Common Swift, by the way.
That's probably why they built it there.
Of course. And all these really straight streets are, how do you say, straight? No.
Yeah, straight.
Were rebuilt basically after the earthquake of 1755. And basically we are partially at least above water because this is amazing, but this is for like, you know, the Dutch are the specialists on that kind of constructions, but we are above the basically the estuary, at least partially from there. Yeah.
So it's flowing underneath us right now.
Right. But I believe this is a fascinating city. For instance,
beautiful.
Today it's a beautiful spring day with 24 centigrades is almost something like 76, 78 Fahrenheit. Sunny. It's I really enjoy to just walk and to go to nice places here. So I'm trying to show you the main square of Lisbon, Praça do Comércio over there, which again facing the river, of course. It's a beautiful square.
So when birders come here on a spring or a fall excursion, typically what size list of species could they expect to see? Because we hit a 160, right, with 5 days.
Right.
And some bad weather. We had some bad weather.
Yes. In 8 days, normally 170, 75. In 10 days, 180. Because obviously you do not gain proportionally more species. It becomes more and more difficult to get new ones. It's just, for instance, in 10, I recommend at least 10, 11, 12 days ideally to see everything in a relaxed pace.
I see.
But yes, something like that. 180 is perfectly possible, especially on the migration periods like spring and fall.
And in your experience, Joao, what's the number one bird that people want to see when they come to Portugal?
Well, Americans, I would say hoopoe.
Really? Not great bustard?
No, I would say hoopoe. Everybody knows about the hoopoe and wants to see the hoopoe. But I would say, generally speaking, the most charismatic species are greater flamingo, great bustards. Some species are very charismatic because they are endemic. The Iberian magpie, the Iberian imperial eagle, not to say Spanish imperial eagle. What else? Let me think. Species, for instance, for the North European market, they love black-shouldered kite, because Portugal is the best place in Europe,
Right.
namely near Lisbon, to see that species. But I would say, yeah, if you think on the 10 most, for instance, for American market, I would say greater flamingo, great bustard, little bustard. Many people know about black-bellied sand grouse because it's a very interesting family, the sand grouse, you know. We also have pintail sand grouse, but that just in a small area of Portugal further north, so it's more difficult to combine. The vultures, everybody like the vultures because they are so big, bigger than the American ones, of course, except the famous California condor. The Iberian magpie because it's endemic, the Spanish eagle because it's endemic. Other charismatic species, let me think, are, you know, it's not only the species per se, it's the abundance.
Yeah.
For instance, here in the Tagus estuary, in just 20 minutes, if you came, especially in winter or in spring or fall, you literally see after 20 minutes of leaving the airport thousands of greater flamingos, Eurasian spoonbills, all the shorebirds that you can expect on the Western Palearctic, and also birds associated with different habitats like the cork, the handsome cork oak woodlands. And that's very important. And after exploring those areas for, imagine, 2 or 3 days, in just about 60 minutes you reach completely different habitats and you start to see completely different birds, like the steppe area of Castro Verde, the Castro Verde plains, in order to see great bustard, little bustard, the vultures, the eagles, the sand grouse, calandra lark. I forgot to mention 2 very handsome species, always very required: European roller and European bee-eater, of course.
No, yeah. Very popular.
Very popular. Great spotted cuckoo is another one. It's a spectacular bird, as you saw.
Yeah, oh yeah, very much. So, if people listening to the podcast, much of which we've recorded here in your car, so we've been driving around, if people wanted to find out more about you and about birding in Portugal, where could they do that? Where could they find information?
Sure, it's very easy because we were basically the first company back in 2008. So as you can see, bird watching tours in Portugal is something relatively new. I started the first company in 2008. So just to say that I managed to have the website is very easy to memorize. It's basically birds.pt, PT from Portugal. So that's probably the best way to access, but of course I'm very happy to receive emails or any contact from someone that is interested in getting more information about
Can be
our
accommodated,
tours.
sir.
Can be accommodated, sir. That can be arranged, sir.
And I suppose people just could Google your name, Joao Jara. Right.
Well, you need the Jara because João, there are many.
There are many.
João is basically John.
Right.
In fact, I think is the most common name in Portugal. Can you imagine? So
your last, J.
My
Spell
surname.
your name for everyone.
Okay, so my first name is João, which is Joao, with that till, that funny till on top of the A to open the A. And then my surname is Jara, which is just again 4 letters, Jara.
Okay. Well, we got that.
Which in fact is Spanish origin. You see, nobody's
see?
perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
In case you couldn't tell, Portugal was a fantastic experience. Despite my nasty cold, which you can hear in my voice in these recordings, and despite the unseasonably cold, rainy, and windy weather, which you can also hear in these recordings, I'd go back in a heartbeat. And in fact, we're planning a Portugal trip for Birdwatchers Digest readers as part of our Reader Rendezvous series of events. You can learn more about our events, including the American Birding Expo and our Reader Rendezvous, by visiting our events page on our website at birdwatchersdigest.com/events. Now I'd like to tell you about another special trip that is an opportunity for you and other listeners to This Birding Life. Our friends at Rock Jumper Birding Tours, one of this podcast's generous sponsors, are inviting you to join me on a once-in-a-lifetime tour to New Zealand and its sub-Antarctic islands. Not only will we see many endemic and iconic birds such as kiwis, parrots, wattlebirds, stitchbirds, penguins, and albatrosses, but we'll also get to go ashore on several rarely visited islands. And while we're there, we'll record a podcast episode together during the trip for broadcast later in the year. Now, this trip is scheduled for January 4 to 15, 2017, and space is limited. But you can get full details about the trip on the Rock Jumper website at rockjumperbirding.com. I hope you'll consider joining me on this fantastic New Zealand trip. And while we're at it, let's thank Rock Jumper for sponsoring This Birding Life. With more than 350 trips annually to hundreds of destinations, Rock Jumper is the world's largest birding tour company. But their quantity of tours doesn't mean the quality suffers. Rock Jumper clients rave about the guides, the destinations, planning, and the birds they experience on every trip, and that's why so many Rock Jumper clients come back again and again. Check out everything Rock Jumper has to offer at rockjumperbirding.com. We're also honored to be sponsored by Carl Zeiss Sports Optics, maker of fine binoculars and spotting scopes for birding, including the new top-of-the-line binocular, the Victory SF, which you have to try out to believe. You can join the online community of Zeiss birders at facebook.com/ZeissBirding. Carl Zeiss. We make it visible. Finally, thanks to Birdwatchers Digest, North America's longest-running popular magazine for birders, which was started by my parents in our living room in the summer of 1978 when I was in 10th grade. It's a magazine for birders who love to read and readers who love to bird. Try out our current issue at birdwatchersdigest-digital.com or sample all of our other offerings at birdwatchersdigest.com. Well, folks, that's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, as always. And until next time, which will be episode 60 of This Birding Life, by the way, this is Bill Thompson III saying, I'll see you out there. Later.